massive recruiting weekend for the Wisconsin Badgers football team. Let's dive into it with the great Jake Kocorowski next. Locked On Badgers.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I appreciate you being in every day or for making this your first listen. Thank you for being part of this community. I know there's a billion podcasts out there you could listen to. So to spend a little bit of time here with us, appreciate it. Thank you. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right on, new customers and get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Today's episode, we are talking the massive recruiting weekend for the Badgers, breaking down the offensive and defensive players and doing some official visits to Superlatives with the great Jake Kocorowski. Second time on the show, man. Welcome back. I appreciate your time as always.
Oh, man. Thanks for having me on, man. It's always good seeing you. I know we got that Discord that we always chat on, but it's great being back on, man, talking some Badgers in a huge recruiting weekend and a really, I would say, a crucial stretch, not just for the Badgers, but for all college football programs during these summer official visits.
Yeah, man, I agree. Let's start with those official visits. Let's start with the offensive side. I want to just kind of break it up, offense, defense, and we're going to do some superlatives at the end. A couple big-time receivers I want to start with coming in this weekend. Plan A targets in a group that Wisconsin hasn't landed a lot of receivers the last couple years in recruiting cycles, just two really, with Barry Johnson, Eugene Hilton. I feel like this is a massive position of need this year. Let's talk Jayden Petit and Zachary Washington coming in.
Right. You know, Jayden Petit, he played at Naples First Baptist Academy, confirmed with me too. And I know it was on another on SI site that he was transferring to Naples St. John Newman, which actually whose head coach is former Wisconsin captain and former walk-on Chris Maragos. So he's out coaching there. And so Petit, obviously big frame, the height stands out, but his ability to be a dynamic player in that offense, I think is good. Could be very interesting for Wisconsin, and a player that he comes up for a March practice, if I'm not mistaken, and then next thing he's back for the April 19th spring showcase. So that those are unofficial visits. Those aren't official visits. This is going to be the official visit where players are treated by the program. The official visits for those that to reiterate, this is where the program and the athletic department, they pay for players to come to Madison, wine and dine them, all these activities. And so, but the fact that he came on 2 unofficial visits in the spring, I think speaks to just how well Jordan Reid has recruited this position, in his first year, and continuing what Kenny Guyton has done, who is now the quarterback's coach, but he was the receivers coach last year. So Petit, I think, if it'd be a huge pickup for Wisconsin. I think he's a consensus 4-star or near consensus 4-star recruit.
Yep. And you look at some of the offer list for him, he's got a Miami and Oklahoma, Tennessee, UNC, among others. This is a national guy. Right.
This is a national recruit, and then you have another guy like Zachary Washington, maybe more national, but he also has, very much concentrated within the Midwest with naming his top schools. And I know he's announced, if I'm not mistaken, right, he's announced official visits to like Michigan State too and whatnot. But Washington has been a long-time target. He was offered last April in 2024, was there for spring practice. He's been back multiple times. And they already have one wide receiver commit in Tayshawn Bardo, who will be up here this weekend too. But, Washington's also, you watch his stat, you watch his junior film, explosive, and he did some things running the ball too, especially I think, if I'm mistaken, in the return game. And his height, I think he was listed at like 6'2" on Huddle. So, both, and I think Petit, is listed higher than that. So in terms of height, so you have 2 larger, more dynamic receivers. And if you pair that with what Jeff Grimes is trying to do with a wide zone rushing attack that has play action and the ability to keep defenses honest by, having explosive plays downfield on intermediate and deep routes, I think those would be really good, to pair with Bardo, I think would be a really good wide receiver class for Wisconsin.
Yeah, I love where you went with the Grimes, because these are the prototypes that Grimes is looking for. He wants to be able to hit deep play action off that running game. Both these players with elite type of speed, stop and start, big time targets for the Badgers. Let's shift to another huge target, Amari Latimer, who if you have never watched football, like if you sat somebody down who never watched football and sat him in front of Amari Latimer's Huddle film, they would be able to say that guy's pretty good. Physical runner coming out of the South. 4-star guy, high 3-star, low 4-star guy. Again, a loaded offer list. What's your feel on Amari Latimer, the running back coming up?
Yeah, I mean, he was there for the April 19th spring showcase as well. I mean, they had a lot of recruits at that spring scrimmage that was open to the public. And again, you kind of hit it right on the head. You watch his huddle film. He's a player that he rushed for over 1,000 yards last season, according to Max Preps. A bruiser of a back where he's not afraid of contact. He can run between the tackles, but he also has that speed to get to the next level. And at the high school level, at least, create separation running the ball, which is huge for a back, especially with the type of offense that a wide zone scheme for Wisconsin, what they're trying to run. He may be as prototypical a back as you want within this offense. And on top of that, you shouldn't discount him catching the ball. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. And I would say he's more of a, I don't know if you call him all purpose, but he can run. He's shown in high school that he can catch the ball efficiently and then also have the ability to make plays and pick up yards after catch. So a huge target for Wisconsin. They did not sign a running back in the 2025 class. It's imperative they get at least one for this class, and obviously, I'm sure they're happy with Darian Dupree and Dylan Jones and Gideon Atuka with the class of 2024, but they do need at least one running back in this class, unless you want to try to go take someone in the portal. But I think you want to develop those players, especially within this system. And he would just be another 4-star back that would be, that could come to Wisconsin. I know there was a crystal ball by 24/7 Sports to previously for Wisconsin, but we'll see how things play out. I haven't really heard anything on my end, but he's going to be one to watch throughout this recruiting cycle, regardless, to see where he goes. And if he follows, his brother, cornerback Jameer Latimer II, he transferred to Wisconsin from Jacksonville State in the offseason. So I'm sure Wisconsin's would, he's a priority to be, try to reunite with his brother and have another brotherly duo playing in Cardinal and white.
Yeah, dude, I think that brother angle is going to get played up extensively. Hopefully they're close growing up. Not all brothers are. I think they actually are, by the way. Does he remind, so it's hard watching huddle film and then saying he reminds me of this player, but he looks a little like a Corey Clement type of back. I think a little more power, maybe not quite as nimble. Does he remind you of anybody, Latimer?
Right now, it's always hard during this, but during this time, I mean, I can see the Clement with the way he's built, and he's put together as a high school recruit. I'm sure he could probably play at the college level right now if you wanted him to, but it's hard. I always worry about that because you just never know. I mean, with someone like a Darian Dupree, you could kind of tell that he could be the all-purpose type of back where, Chicago Mount Carmel used Dupree as a slot receiver. He used it when I was there watching him live. He was in the slot. He was in the backfield. You could see the various purposes. Even Nate White was someone when I know he's at South Dakota State now, but he had a 5-touchdown game when I watched him. You could see the athleticism there and the ability to do more. And I think it's hard when you don't watch him live, but just watching the highlights, I could see a Clement. I think someone that can catch. I don't know how well Corey Clement did in the NFL catching passes out of the backfield. I know he wasn't necessarily asked to do too much in that regard at Wisconsin, but I do think, you could probably put in terms of body type, stockiness, probably Clement, but I think he's got an ability to catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit better.
I love it. Let's finish up here on the offensive side. And we're not going to get to every single prospect, but I definitely want to hit on Kamari Blair, kind of a high 3, low 4-star tackle coming in, 6'6", 280. The Badgers have missed on a couple of their plan A offensive linemen, a couple tackles that have already kind of maybe moved off of the Badgers that they targeted early. Blair feels like a really nice pivot if they're able to make up ground here. They were a little late maybe to this recruitment, but it seems like they're in a good spot right here with him coming up to Madison for this OV.
Yeah, I mean, Kamari Blair, he's from Clarksville, Kirkwood in Tennessee, just north of Nashville. And really, Wisconsin, I had a chance to talk with him a couple of weeks ago, and it's going to be interesting to see how Wisconsin can do within this regard. We've seen AJ Blazik, last April really be on a kick for that 2025 class where, Cam Clark commits. And then, the first, I'm in Milwaukee at a family function, and I'm seeing Logan Powell's committing to Wisconsin, and so, that was out of the blue where, he had, top schools like Alabama, if I'm not mistaken, and others in that regard. And then you see Nolan Davenport jump on board, and then a big win by Hardy Watts, and who, received second team reps alongside Davenport during spring practices as early enrollees. So that's just speaks to the resume of AJ Blazek being a really good recruiter. To me, Blazek's a home run hire. And when you look at Blair, looks like an offensive tackle, and he, in my eyes, I think it would be really interesting for Wisconsin to bring on. And again, kudos to Blazek for the rapport built quickly. And, Blair told me that he knew he would like Blazek right from the start, just because of the fact that when they called on the phone, he didn't offer him right away. And Blazek had told him that he wanted to build a relationship before doing so. And then he got the offer in person after missing out on state and shot put by 2 inches. So that kind of, a melancholy day in terms of not making state and track. But the next thing you know, he gets an offer from Wisconsin, and then he's scheduling an official visit for a first weekend. So, Wisconsin is in good spot though with its offensive line. In terms of commits, Benjamin Novak out of Maryville, Andrian in Indiana. You have also Maddox Cochran from Richmond, was it Benedict College Prep over in Virginia. So they're good right now. And, I know that there's been others that have scheduled official visits for the upcoming weeks as well. But I think Wisconsin, if they can, I'm not going to put anything past AJ Blazek and the staff with just how they can build rapport. And it's not just like fake rapport. I mean, it's genuine with Blazek, I firmly believe. If they could get him, it'd be a nice addition to the class, and you'd have 3 linemen. And then on top of that, I mean, it will be interesting to see just how many linemen they do take, but that could help, most of that offensive line class could be done because they took 5 scholarship linemen in the last 2 classes, even though Derek Jensen's now at Iowa State.
Yeah, it's a great point on Blazek and the charisma he's able to build, or the relationship he's able to build with players, and the fact that their last 2 offensive line classes have been pretty good. We need to take a quick second there. We're going to come back, talk defensive prospects, plus where can you find Jake's work. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel is incredible. Listen, we use FanDuel at Locked On, and been using them for a long time because they're fast, they're easy, they're simple to use. They spice up your sports weekend. You have every type of bet that you want on. If you want to parlay something, if you want to get a teaser, live in-game betting. NBA playoffs are going on right now, and they've been incredible. FanDuel is an awesome way to make that experience even a little more exciting with those live in-game bets. So the game, even if the score gets out of control, you can still have fun with it over on FanDuel. Plus, Major League Baseball is going on. I love baseball. I'm a huge baseball fan. Grew up a Braves fan. It's a great, as always, because the starting pitchers are always changing. A ton of fun that you can bet with Major League Baseball over at FanDuel.com as well. Plus, if you're a new user, it is a great time to sign up. Right now, head over to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it hits, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's jump back into this with Jake. Jake, man, as always, I mentioned this before, but where can people find, all the content? You've been turning out a ton of content. Where can people find your work?
Yeah, if you guys go to si.com/college/Wisconsin or just search Wisconsin Badgers on SI on Google, you'll find the site there. It's a free site. Don't worry about subscriptions there. It's nice to have an ability to, we have a staff. Lauren Cox leads the site, and we try to deliver quick content for everybody, but good analysis and not just any clickbaity type of stuff. We try to dive in. Like this entire week's been dedicated towards official visits, previews, and breaking down not just who's going to be in town, but just how these official visits have influenced Wisconsin's classes in the last 2 years, who's been some of the big commits that have signed with the program that took official visits. And then also a local flavor to it too. I was really happy with this. We had a local artist, Tony Kocorowski, from Milwaukee area, moved to Madison. They built the wood for it, but he designed and he created a mural that'll be used for Wisconsin's official visits for the photo shoot backgrounds. It's already been used during the late April official visits. So I was really fortunate to talk to him, and we try to deliver that unique content over at Wisconsin Badgers on SI.
Yeah, the mural looks incredible, by the way. It is really, really well done, and it pops on social media. let's talk defensive side here. I'm going to kick it over to you to start this one. Who's a couple of defensive prospects you're looking at coming in this weekend that you really think are big time for Wisconsin if they're able to land them?
Yeah, I think the safety positions that's my dog right over there. For y'all didn't see that over there, that's Charlie over there. She's a good girl. But I think safety is one just with the athleticism of someone like a Zachary Taylor, who, for those that don't know, he's from Katy Jordan High School in Texas. Not Katy, Texas, I think, which is the high school of former Wisconsin walk-on turned, I think he was a captain, Colin Wilder, but same area. But he's got, he's tweeted about recorded stats of a 4.39 40-yard dash. He's a sprinter in the 100-meter. I think athletic.net had him at like a 10.5 something in April. So the speed's there. Have him for safety. Nick Reddish is another one that's expected to come this weekend. But so I think they're still looking for a safety commit. I'm kind of looking at and even though they have one edge, an outside linebacker prospect right now that's committed in Carmelo Reid, I think if you're looking for big time prospects, that position group has produced well at Wisconsin, especially with someone like a Nicholas Clayton last year, signing with the team. Thomas Heiberger, who I know he's moved over to inside linebacker from that spot, but he's still an outside linebacker. That was a 4-star kid. But Mikhail Blade from Chicago Simeon, and then also Jackson Samuels Ford out of Malvern Prep in Pennsylvania. Those two are, both 4-star. Ford's almost a consensus 4-star recruit. They are national recruits that are being recruited by some of the best in the Big Ten and nationally. And Mikhail Blade, that's a big one for Wisconsin. He was also among those like Latimer, like Petit. They were at that April 19th spring showcase. And so for him to come back and for them to secure an official visit amongst the likes of, I think the other reported ones included, I think, Michigan. I know he was at Purdue this past weekend based off of his Instagram stories. And then, I know he was recruited by USC, Notre Dame, among others. So I think for Wisconsin, I think that's a huge, if they can continue the process of building rapport, and Matt Mitchell's done, I think, a great job as a recruiter for the staff since arriving on campus and identifying talent that way. And so that's a big visit there. And then, Jackson Samuels Ford too has, I think through 24/7, he announced an updated schedule, and, there are a lot of Big Ten teams in the mix for him too. So I think those are the two big names there. I think Wisconsin's done well recruiting those positions, that position on the edge. So if they don't land them, I don't think it's the end of the world. Obviously, you want to continue that pipeline of getting 4-star kids, but I do think there are other not issues, I would say, but other position groups to really tackle in these upcoming weeks. And that includes defensive line, and I would say, the cornerback and safety rooms.
Yeah, it's that front seven, and I agree with you. I think they've landed some really nice prospects there. You have Jalen Williams last year, a couple other really nice interior guys with Xavier Pono, who I think he's got a pretty high upside going forward for Wisconsin. But that also feels like a spot the last two cycles, whether it's D-line or linebacker, they've had to really hit the portal hard. So this is where you'd like to see them start to stock that pipeline, right? So every year it's not a rinse, repeat portal. Jackson Samuels Ford is a guy with a really nice length. And then Blade, like you mentioned, would be a high upside guy that you almost need to land a guy like that every year. Is that realistic for Wisconsin, though? I don't know.
I think you can't. I mean, with this recruiting staff right now, I think it's possible. And even without Max Steiner, the former director of player personnel, Pat Lambert, still director of recruiting. He's got a ton of energy on him. I think they've also, credit to Luke Fickle, that they have assistants that can recruit. I think, Jordan Reid, I know it's wide receivers. And I know we're talking about defense, but, I think he's done a good job on that end in terms of recruits there, and then you're seeing guys like Mitchell and, Mike Tressel and Tuff Borland. I mean, Tuff Borland's become I know he committed to Arizona State, but Mason Martin liked Tuff Borland, Aiden Reeder from Cincinnati St. Xavier, who committed this month. He visited, Tuff Borland also visited him there. And I think, I think it's possible just with this staff, and it's also an expanded recruiting staff.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge compared to the end of the Paul Chryst era, where they didn't have this type of infrastructure within the recruiting department. So even with change, on top of that too, I some of the assistants too on defense, like Jack Cooper, man. Like, I mean, I know they haven't landed a safety commit, but I think he's done great work on the recruiting trail too, just based off of, who he's trying to visit. You see the players tweeting out there, oh, thanks for him for stopping by, and you see all, that, like, I think, and I know Hunter Wohler, I think, mentioned, I thought it was on social media somewhere, how much he praised Jack Cooper too. So I think they're in position to land it at these position groups. I think D-line's the one place to watch though, just because of who they've missed out on of late. And can they get some of those, defensive line recruits? I think they got a solid group coming in this week for sure. And we'll see just, how that class finishes out.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned some of the younger coaches, Borland, Coach Cooper. I've talked to a couple of players and recruits have raved about Coach Cooper. So a big fan of him being, I think, of a young, dynamic hire that's going to pan out really well for the Badgers. Let me finish up on the defensive side, and then we're going to get into some superlatives. In-state recruiting used to be such a massive part of this program, and this show is not going to be the show to dive down that entire rabbit hole. That's a 30-minute show into of itself.
That's a 2-hour show, depending on who you talk to, man. People have been in my DMs talking about people texting.
Same. Like the wall around Wisconsin, if you remember what it used to be under Barry Alvarez, it's now crumbled a little bit. However, Ben Wenzel, linebacker from Arrowhead, coming in this weekend, a player that also picked up an Oklahoma offer. What are your quick thoughts on Wenzel coming in with an in-state?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's big. I think it's the fact that, he announced the official visit even before he got announced an offer from Wisconsin. And the fact that he's a key priority because he's on that first weekend, one, but two, he also, you look at that board for Wisconsin, they had Aiden Reeder, which I think helped out Wisconsin a lot when it came to, they had a linebacker in the class already. But TJ White, from the 4-star linebacker from Mississippi, announced that he was no longer taking it, earlier, an official visit this weekend. He announced that earlier this month. Martin then, commits to Arizona State. So I think, if they want a couple of linebackers, I think Wenzel's the one. There's an athleticism with him. He fits his height and weight. I think he listed himself at 6'3" and 217 on Huddle. Very much falls in line with the athletic frame, the athleticism and the frame that you want in this Mike Tressel type defense. You see someone like a Christian Alego at 6'4", 240, 245. Tackett Curtis is like 6'2", 6'3". Mason Posa was a listed 6'3" on Huddle. So these bigger, more athletic linebackers that can fly around. I think Wenzel could be one of those athletic kids that, this would be, if he would commit sometime to Wisconsin on the road, it'd be the third straight class underneath Fickle that a in-state linebacker would commit to the program, because Landon Gauthier did it back in from Green Bay Bayport for the 24 class, along with Cooper Catalano last year. So I think, with him, I think, again, the athleticism's there, and I think, we'll see what happens. But, he did announce I think 2 official visits. I don't know if he's, it was to Oklahoma, but then also to Kansas. I thought he had announced those. And so we'll see just how Wisconsin does, but obviously the first 2 weekends have been huge for Wisconsin in terms of their priority targets. And I don't think that's any different this year. So I think, I would anticipate the staff really putting an effort to try to get him to stay within the state, especially with Gavin Meyer going to, Minnesota and others going out of state. Now I think I only say the one Gavin Meyer right now, just because Wisconsin was actively pursuing him at that point. So, we'll see just what happens with Wisconsin, and they can lock in another in-state standout.
Yeah, and Meyer had a couple of interesting comments on the way out too. So we'll see. We're going to take a quick second here, come back, finish up this show with Jake with superlatives, including who would be the biggest get from this weekend. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick second, as always, say thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of this community. All right, let's jump back on with Jake. Biggest recruit. Well, who is the most first name that pops in your mind here? And there's several to choose from. This is a pretty loaded weekend, but most talented player coming in.
Oh gosh. Let's see. Instantly off of the top of my head, someone like a Jayden Petit or Amari Latimer on offense, and I would say on defense like a Mikhail Blade, just based off of their abilities. But if you had to choose one, I think Latimer, just because they need a running back in this class. So it's part of my criteria. It may be flawed for those that listen, so I apologize. But I think Latimer, just what he could bring to this offense is exactly what they're looking for. And I think he's going to have a monster senior year if injuries or other unforeseen circumstances, if those don't pop up. I think he could have he'll have a big year. I think you're going to see even more talent from him in that regard. But I would also say, I'll go defensively. I think Blade could be really an intriguing prospect. He's a consensus 4-star kid. I know Rivals has him as the top 110 players in the 26 class. So I think it's between those two with Petit, and even like a Ryan Hopkins could be right behind him too. I don't think people realize how talented he could be.
Yep.
Hopkins could be, because 4-star kid by Rivals and ESPN, but he was at J. Sarah Catholic in California. He transferred to the Powerhouse prep program, Santa Ana Mater Dei, and like this kid, he has a strong arm. I don't think he got to show it. Now he will have a chance to air it out a lot, but he also has that dual threat. He's a big athlete that has the capabilities to run the ball. He ran apparently, I think it was reported somewhere, he ran a 4.56 40-yard dash. I think the underclassmen report tweeted that out recently, but he also ran a 10.56 or something like that, or 10.66. I think it was 10.66 according to athletic.net. He ran a very fast 100-meter dash. So
as a 6'3" guy with a pretty good arm.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know what, I'm going to change that. I'll say Hopkins, but because you haven't seen it, I think he's underrated, but I think he's a kid that could turn heads this year at Mater Dei.
Well, let me pivot here, and we just got a couple minutes left because I know you're super busy, and I want to always be respectful of the time. Should Badger fans hope? I don't know if I've asked you this before. Should Badger fans hope that he has a breakout season at Mater Dei?
I think so.
Here's my question: does that, with both of us knowing the pedigree of that program, does that create an opportunity for an Oregon or a Washington or Ohio State to then maybe take a second look?
I'm sure there is, and I haven't had a chance to look at Oregon's quarterback class for 26 or for Ohio State's.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you always got to watch out though. I mean, it happens for every kid. You want them to succeed. I don't think you'd want them to have a mediocre type of year. I mean, you want them to play their best. And so I'll lean towards that. And it's up to this, I think it's, then it's up to the staff. It's up to Kenny Guyton. It's up to Pat Lambert and others to really sink their teeth in terms of just continuing to build that rapport and keeping in contact and saying, hey, I mean, this is a quarterback that was offered when Phil Longo was still offensive coordinator. So he's been a priority target since last fall and was one of the first Power 4 offers, I think, for Hopkins. So I think that's part of it. I think Wisconsin can lean on that, but also just the fact that, how Wisconsin's offense does this year, I think it's also a showing for Wisconsin's offense on the field to really show what, Billy Edwards can do. Not even running the ball, but airing it out and the play action and just how successful this offense can be and how it can highlight Hopkins' abilities as a quarterback within this wide zone running scheme, and then being able to do what you can do out of multiple looks and, airing it out, but also having a chance to extend plays too.
Last question here, kind of a big picture question. Badger fans have been a little, I would say, a little concerned about the start of this 26 recruiting class, somewhat based on how strong those 24 and 25 classes were. How much of this is related to Max Steiner leaving kind of in the middle of this recruiting cycle to USC? Is it a big impact, little impact? Is it kind of just right in the middle? What do you think the impact of Max leaving has? I
think there's always an impact when someone of that caliber leaves. I mean, it's undeniable. It's in terms of just what Max Steiner brought to the position. And you've seen just how USC is recruited and how they've revamped the staff. It's not just Max over there, but, Chad Bowden came over from Notre Dame, and was it Dre Brown? I think it was from Illinois. Hopefully I got the name right. But they brought over some, they stacked the deck when it came to filling out their recruiting staff over at Southern Cal. So, but I mean, you see what Ethan Russo's done too. And, I remember watching him at the spring showcase, and, he was attached to the hip of Jayden Petit. I think it's Petit or Petit. And he was attached to his hip, and so I think he's also done a good job. And I also think too, you're seeing these players like it may be a little bit later in the cycle, but Wisconsin's continued to, even without Max, to recruit players and get them on, trips here. The name of Wisconsin's still prevalent. You're getting kids that came in during the spring, and then you've also locked in official visits with many with many recruits, and we're still seeing that happen now with the third weekend coming up, and back in mid-June where you're seeing recruits announcing. So I think that's a good sign for Wisconsin, where they're still able to build rapport quickly. And credit to, it's not just Ethan Russo, but the entire staff for Wisconsin, the coaches too, for keeping that rapport up. But it's also, that's Wisconsin, the way Wisconsin staff also is built up now. You have Pat, you have Marcus Sudbury as, now the GM, and we'll see, who else, like how everything continues to evolve for Wisconsin throughout this recruiting cycle, especially with the House settlement coming up. That should, everyone's hoping that it gets approved, that settlement. But it's also like they're able to withstand these type of changes. Yeah, it's a tough loss, for no doubt, with the energy and the insights that Max brought. But they're able to now, Pat can take on things. They brought on Ethan Russo. And so they have that, talk about that recruiting staff being expanded now. You have that group, that they have plenty of personnel there that can help out too. And I think, the fact that they've had the number of 4-star kids that are coming on campus this weekend and who they're still recruiting, I think it shows that they, it's always going to be a loss when you lose someone with that title and who Max is, but they've also absorbed it, and they're continuing to churn, and it's a big weekend ahead, and a big 3 weekends ahead for Wisconsin at the least to show these kids.
Yeah, that is very well said. He is the great Jake Kocorowski. Again, stop over for the second time to slum it with me. Always appreciate it. Go check out his work on Twitter. Definitely go check out what he's doing on SI. Jake, any final thoughts on the way out the door?
No, man. Just, guys, hopefully you guys check out, Wisconsin Badgers on SI. It's part of the Sports Illustrated network. We got a lot of, we're growing. It's free content. So it's also good content. We try to make it all the analysis that we can give you. And, again, don't need a subscription. So as always, my man, always appreciate you too.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Bunch more content coming up this week as the official visits start to unfold into this week and into next week on Wisconsin, and we will definitely talk to you later.